Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay male couples and the decision to have kids. So, in my long career providing therapy for gay couples, which is 28 years in 2020, I've fairly often worked with gay male couples who want to discuss the option of having kids together. And when the Supreme Court legalized marriage equality on the national level, it prompted many gay male couples to get married, and for some, they wanted to expand their two-person family unit, as I call gay male couples, into more, with the addition of one or many more children through a variety of options to become fathers legally and domestically and socially. So let's look at preparing for parenthood. When any couple, but here we focus on gay men, starts to discuss the option of having children, we must first consider the status of the relationship. Ideally, the relationship between the two partners, and perhaps more in a polyamorous family arrangement, a polycule, the relationship needs to be sound. Many people would recommend that the partners be together for at least a year or more, preferably more, and that they enjoy a reasonably stable day-to-day life of their health, their finances, their safety, and their security of where they live. They should be committed to each other and their potential children for the very long haul, such as when a baby reaches young adulthood or even beyond. And by committed, I don't necessarily mean monogamous. It can be, but there are consensual non-monogamous gay male couples that have children. So that would be kind of a separate issue about the status of your relationship on the range between monogamy versus non-monogamy, and there are other episodes on that. But both partners should have a reasonably stable physical health. They're not facing any immediate health crisis that might distract them from caring for their child. They should have a reasonably stable mental health, getting either psychiatric or psychotherapy or whatever help they need for any mental health challenges that, again, might interfere with childcare. The relationship should feel good and not feel like it's on the rocks or on the brink of breaking up. And a certain domestic stability. You have good housing, you have plenty of ability to access food, access to medical care for everybody concerned, and an income that's commensurate with your needs, and preferably with a comfortable cushion beyond that. The home should be free of domestic abuse or violence of any kind. The home should be free of any untreated drug or alcohol abuse or dependency, and free of any stressors that might interfere with properly caring for children of any age, and free of any conditions where child abuse or neglect or danger could occur. Something that might involve the local Department of Children and Family Services. And the home should be free of these problems and stressors, for a while. Not just a tentative stability, but a fairly reliable one that feels within reason enduring. Things happen always in families, but, a reasonably stable period. And there should be reasonable access to school resources, either public or private, and maybe even daycare resources, depending on your situation for having a young child or even a preschooler. So the status of the relationship should be clear, with the partners either legally protected through private contracts, being registered domestic partners, or legally married. Some single gay men have children too, but for purposes here, we're just going to focus on the two-person gay male couple, or maybe with an eye toward the polycule, since this is the situation that I've worked with the most in my clinical practice. It's usually two guys in a couple. Now, unlike most straight couples who can, have babies simply by foregoing birth control and having sex, barring medical fertility issues, gay men who want children need to have an opportunity to have biological women involved, one or more. For example, one woman might donate her egg or eggs, while another woman carries the baby to term after the egg is fertilized and in vitro fertilization with sperm from one or the other or both male partners. Some couples mix the sperm and let nature do the rest of which one sperm gets to fertilize the egg. Or in the case of infant adoption or foster care to adoption, the children would have been born by a biological mother already, and then you'd be working with like a local county of social services or Department of Children and Family Services for the children available in your area to adopt, or you might go the route of foreign adoption as well. And it's important for each partner in the couple to do some real soul searching early in the process, even independent of your own partner, on why you want to consider becoming a parent. So let's look at that. Reflective questions to ask yourself. I'm going to give you a long list, okay? Asking yourself the questions that you ponder silently or even journal about. And it's important to really identify and reflect on your feelings and be very honest with yourself. Allow yourself to have kind of politically incorrect answers when you think of these. So here are some of those self-reflection questions, kind of in no particular order. Number one, do you want to have kids because you want to give to the next generation of people in the country or in the planet? Does any part of you want kids because for gay men they are a status symbol that you could afford about $100,000 it takes to have kids through an egg donor and surrogate mother? Is it like driving a luxury car or having an expensive house? You have to be careful that having children isn't just a status symbol. Number 3, are you invested in the idea of propagating your family name for another generation? Are you reacting to pressure from a parent who, they want grandkids, and they're pressuring you? Number 5, are you responding to heteronormative pressure, where if you can't be a straight guy and married to a woman with kids, you'll be a gay guy and married with kids instead, so that you are approximating the heterosexual traditional family? And is that because you want to, or because you feel that you have to from social or family pressures? Number 6, do you want kids because you want the chance for a do-over after your own childhood was unhappy, and having kids lets you have a better child by living vicariously through them? Number 7, do you want someone to be there to care for you in your elderly years because you fear being elderly or infirm or alone when you're a much older person? Number 8, do you have the emotional capacity of what therapists call affect regulation, which is basically controlling your emotions, frustration tolerance, being able to sacrifice of yourself without resentment, being able to have delayed gratification, the ability to compromise, to set limits and boundaries, and just other signs of emotional maturity that parenting would demand? Number 9, are you confident that you love and trust your partner enough to have kids with them for the long term? Do you have any secret doubts about your relationship that would make making such a long-term commitment with him uncomfortable for you? Are you hiding anything major from him? Do you suspect that he's hiding anything major from you? Number 10, if you are an abuse survivor, do you feel safe that you would not repeat with your child the abusive behavior that was modeled for you? Would you know of different ways of disciplining a child? Would you know of how to handle your anger that was different in a way than maybe your mom or dad demonstrated? What would you do if you found yourself reacting in a way that your abusive parent did? What would you know about reaching out for help for yourself or for your child? Number 11, are you prepared that your child might be very different from you in personality or values? And what if you shared very few interests? Or what if they kind of rejected you? How would you handle this? Number 12, do you have any expectations of your child up front that you would resent him or her for if they didn't meet those expectations? Do you have your own version of rejection of difference? And so many gay men talk about a sense of rejection from their heterosexual fathers. Well, how would you feel if your son or daughter were gay or lesbian? How would you feel if they were very, very straight? Are you even prepared for if your child is trans? So these are all things that gay male potential parents think about, just like heterosexual ones should. Number 13, are you prepared for raising a child that turns out to have special needs? Maybe ones that weren't apparent when they were born or when they were first adopted, but the special needs emerged that need a response. What if your child might be gay or straight, or even trans, but it manifested in a way that you were not expecting? Number 14, could you defer your own preferences for the sake of your child's best interests? So all of these answers might fall on a range from yes to no. And it's okay if you have some doubts or misgivings about one or more of those. Couples therapy or individual therapy or both can help you identify and work through some of these questions that might need airing. And the cognitive and emotional facilitation of a therapist. These are all things that you would work on either with your partner in couples therapy, openly working through the doubt or the question, or it's something you could do as an individual, even away from your partner and with your therapist, to enjoy the privacy of working through your private doubts or misgivings and getting support for those so that you don't feel like you're isolated in your concerns. Let's go back to the status of your relationship. When you and your partner reflect on your relationship, how ready do you feel for children? I don't think couples are always 100% ready, because there's always some anticipation and some excitement, and just a little bit of a trepidation is normal. But are you and your partner even cohabitating yet? Do you share a home dwelling together? You might want to live together for a while before considering having children. And have you discussed the status of your relationship with a partner? Do you both see your relationship in the same way? Have you discussed it, at least for now, whether you want monogamy and its many variations, or consensual non-monogamy and its many variations? Something that I, as a therapist, am especially credentialed in. So beyond the emotional life of your relationship, what is your home environment like? Do you have the space for a child where you currently live, either for an infant or for a school-age child or an adolescent if you did foster care? How are your finances month to month? If you had additional costs that a child would represent, where would that come from in your budget? How are your prospects for long-term financial stability? If you had an infant now, what would happen when they were in high school and heading toward college? Would you be able to help with that? If you were raising children out, could you move if you had to or wanted to for a new job? What would happen if you moved the family? How would you care for your children if you were to break up, or if one of you were widowed? What would happen to the children in a case like that? Now let's look at making it happen. Are you and your partner or partners aware of your options for becoming parents? How would you learn about the foster care to adoption option? How would you learn more about surrogacy? How would you learn more about domestic versus foreign adoptions? Have you and your partner discussed what your adopted child must or must not be? What about adopting an older child? How old? What about one with special needs? Or one from a different race or ethnicity from either of you? Do each of you know, if you're considering surrogacy, if you have an adequate sperm count or quality for doing this? Are you okay with surrogacy if only one of you can provide sperm for the fertilization? Do you know how you would get information on medical fertility issues or a fertility MD doctor, consultation? Are each of you aware of your family's medical history or any kind of genetic counseling issues for any serious issues that might run in your family genetically? They have, genetic counselors about people having children. And of course, you'd have to know the birth mother's background as well. But if you're doing the sperm race thing, you would need that information on both men in the couple and of the birth mother. And that would be something to talk to the egg donor about, or the woman carrying the child through surrogacy. Do you have knowledge of resources for childcare or local schools? You might not need that for a while if you're raising an infant, but some idea about what would happen when they're old enough to go to school. Have you and your partner discussed potential differences between raising children now in this generation versus when you were both young? I hear about this from my couples who do have children now, where, things are different in school and things are different socially than when I was a kid or when they were a kid. Have you discussed how parenting might differ for gay versus straight parents? Are there differences, and if so, what are they? I think a lot of gay couples who have kids have talked to me about this, and so much stays the same about, meals and playtime and homework and things like that. But there are some differences, like, what happens if you have two dads and it's Mother's Day coming up. There might be a discussion with your kids about that. And there might just be a discussion about having two same-sex parents versus opposite-sex parents, or kids they might know in school who have lesbian parents. What would the discussions of different kinds of families be like for kids? Have you discussed how you might answer questions from your children or others when they ask about where is mother? I've known gay couples who've had that question from their kids. And they sometimes get it from other kids in school. Why don't you have a mom? And there needs to be a discussion about that. Do you have a social support system for when you need information or advice on raising children? Who would you turn to if you had a question about your child? Maybe something that isn't something that you ask a pediatrician, but maybe it's something that you still want to ask. Your own parents, your siblings, other friends with kids. Have you discussed any major blocks or conflicts to becoming parents, such as not having time to go back to school like you wanted to, or having obligations as a caregiver to your own aging parents, or meeting the demands of your career? If one partner has a job where they travel a lot for work, does the remaining partner get saddled with all of the childcare a big chunk of the time? And if so, would there be the resources for having some kind of respite care, like a nanny or something? Have you discussed how raising a child is a long-term commitment? Certainly until the child is legal age of 18, but often beyond this, through the college years and quite possibly, for a lifetime. Many, adult children have relationships with their parents until their parents are elderly and their adult children are middle age or even, seniors themselves. Have you thought about how your perspective about raising a child might change as you get older through your middle age or senior years? Developmentally, you would change as an adult, growing through different phases of life, just as your child would be going through the phases of growing up. Have you discussed how you might cope if your child became to not share your values or interest or morals or ethics? What if your child got involved in an anti-gay church? That's not likely, but it's possible. What if your child had political or social opinions that were very, very different from yours? How would the two of you identify what you don't know? How would you go about getting your questions answered? Do you know other gay dads who've been there before, and they could be sources of gay-specific behavioral modeling or help? How would you handle problems that come up from things you never thought to ask about? Who would you turn to when you say, oh boy, I never thought of this? Let's talk about, in a different way, the risks and the rewards of having children. And I think both should be considered when you're looking at this decision. And I think these are things that, of course, should be talked about between the partners. So there's several challenges that I've seen repeatedly with gay male couples with children, and they need support sometimes in their couples therapy. So number one is balancing, like I said, the mostly breadwinner role, the partner in the couple or in the relationship who makes the most money, versus the mostly homemaker or parent roles, the one who maybe makes less money or works from home or is just a little more domestic while the other partner is on a lot of business trips. And, I've seen gay male couples that have children, either through surrogacy or adoption, where one partner earns more and is considered that primary breadwinner, and he pays for most of the major expenses, housing, etc., while the other partner earns less and has a more domestic role, not unlike kind of a old-fashioned heterosexist arrangement. I call this the Lucy and Ricky syndrome from the classic TV series I Love Lucy. However, by middle age, someone who has been primarily a stay-at-home dad might want to expand his horizons and have more for himself, such as time or social relationships or professional exploration of opportunities. And the couple has to work through this. Because if you are a couple fairly young and you have kids reasonably young, by the time each of you or one of you reaches about age 40, there could be midlife developmental issues to work through. And some of this is about working through ambivalence about your life. So somebody who's been a stay-at-home dad during his 30s, let's say, by the time he's 40, he might just have developmental midlife questions that come up of wanting to do something different. And then how would that be handled? Number two, some gay couples open their relationship sexually after years of monogamy, and they need support for what this looks like in practical terms when they have obligations, especially around the use of their free time outside of work, to their primary partner and children. So if you were to spend time with, in polyamory, for example, with another boyfriend or paramour, whichever word you want to use to call it, how would that affect time with your primary partner or spouse and each of your children? Number three, the need for support to reconcile differences in how to parent, from a range of a very permissive partner to a very strict partner. If you disagree about how strict to be, you have to kind of work through that so that you're united in how you want to set limits and raise the kids. And you can't really have the child splitting the more strict parent versus the more permissive parent. Number four, needing support for the feelings of fear, anger, grief, frustration, envy, helplessness, hopes, and disappointment of coping with a child who is ill or in some kind of trouble. I'm aware of a gay male couple where their children, by the time they were in their early teens, somehow got into a drug problem. And then they had to, respond to that as a family crisis. Number five, needing support for setting limits with extended family, like each of your parents or siblings, who might be exacerbating some kind of cultural conflict. I have other episodes and blog articles on gaytherapyla.com on dealing with cultural differences in a gay-male relationship, and another one on making the most of your culture. And having those discussions where if the two partners or more come from different ethnicities or different cultures, how does that reflect child rearing? If one of you is Christian and the other one is Jewish, what happens at the holiday season? Do you have a Christmas tree and a menorah? How do you explain those to the kids? Do you only do one or the other? And if so, why? So, or foods, or spirituality, or house rules. There could be all kinds of variables that have to do with the cultural context that you and your partner come from. So the gay male couples I've worked with in my practice who are friends of mine who had children, they describe candidly that raising kids as a gay couple is a series of both risks and rewards, but ultimately with the rewards outweighing the challenges. So having children can be rewarding in watching how children grow and how we have all kinds of skills that get evoked in us that we never knew we had. Many of the couples or the partners, they report, very frustrating short-term problems, but I've really never had a gay couple with kids who seriously regretted their decision to have them. The rewards are too numerous and too great on the plus side, but I think that's also with couples who did a lot of work on themselves before they ever made that kind of commitment. So one thing I've noticed that is associated with gay male couples, both having kids and being successful with it, for all concerned, is money. I've never really seen a middle class or a working class gay male couple with kids, and while I'm sure they exist, they might not be accessing therapy in a private practice with a long-term specialist. However, even when I work in low-cost nonprofits or in public clinics providing therapy for gay men, I didn't see this. It's perhaps an unspoken but important idea that having kids takes money, and a lot of it, for larger housing, particularly in an urban or suburban area, their clothing, which they outgrow quickly, schooling, especially from a private school, all the way from daycare through college. You're buying extra plane tickets or a spare hotel room for vacations. Respite care, such as nannies or babysitters, so that you can have some life as a couple outside of raising kids. Having a weekly date night, for example, would require a babysitter. You might need to spend money on tutors for school or coaches for sports or supplies for kids involved in art or music, healthcare related costs, gifts at holidays and birthdays, you name it. And this concerns me because this doesn't emphasize a gay-straight issue. It becomes a socioeconomic class issue. And I think it's troubling if we surmise that only well-off gay male couples can have kids, like it's a privilege of class. For those who are middle class or lower, special counseling needs about what kinds of supports, such as health insurance programs for kids like Medi-Cal in California or Medicaid, are also important. Let's look at the new definition of family that always was. The truth is the non-traditional family, that is something other than one man, one woman, and multiple kids that conform tightly to gender role stereotypes and heteronormativity, has always had its exceptions in society, including in American society, in all locations, in all ages. And yet openly same-sex headed families, while becoming more and more common, as I'm often told by gay dads, is not something that would have been common when I was a child, for example. So in my practice and in my book, Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want, I promote the idea that everyone has the prerogative as an empowered adult to create their own circumstances that they want to live under. This includes the right to be a parent if you want to be, but also to validate that it is okay not to be. Not every person and not every couple is cut out to be a parent or doesn't want to be. When gay men reject the heteronormativity of being heterosexual, which they don't really have a choice in, they are under no social obligation to be heterosexually adjacent, I call it, by having a heteronormative-looking life with one partner and with children. You are not less of a man for being gay, and you're not less of a man for choosing not to have children. Many or most gay men, though, have some kind of paternal instinct to contend with, even if they decide not to have children. And I have a blog article on gaytherapyla.com/blog on satisfying the paternal instinct for gay men in ways other than having children. Because the instinct can still be there, and you can still make the choice not to be a parent. What I think is important in your life as an individual and your collective life as a couple or as a polycule is that you are considering your options very consciously and mindfully and becoming aware of what pressures or influences you're operating under, making the unconscious motives that are going on for you more conscious. So if you do decide to have children or decide not to, you're making an empowered choice that's right for you. Not only can you make this decision for yourself, but you need to. It's no one else's job except for you and your partner, and the decision to have children needs to be unanimous to work. If there's even one nay vote, the motion doesn't carry, because the expectations and the responsibilities are too great to be forced on any of us. And this decision, having kids or not, can be an important component of basic relationship compatibility with your partner that needs to be resolved. Unfortunately, a serious disagreement of wanting children versus not can lead to a relationship breakup, leaving the partners to find more compatible partners just on this issue alone. And this was a storyline featuring two lesbian characters on Supergirl on TV, where Supergirl's sister broke up with a great girlfriend because she absolutely did not want kids and the other one did. So if you or your partner or both of you need support on any of these issues, please consider having individual therapy or individual coaching. I offer both. Couples therapy or relationship coaching, I offer those. And so myself and my staff are here to help you at Gay Therapy LA. You know the drill. Text or call 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778. Texting's a little bit faster and easier, but whichever. Or you can email ken@gaytherapyla.com for more information or to book your appointment. So, thanks, and I'll see you next time.